Lakota Star Knowledge, which is about looking at life as having three perspectives and looking at these perspectives and saying, what can we learn from them? And where we get in trouble is when we look at these three perspectives and say, which one is the good one? And then we choose one of them and reject the others. And so what's happening here is duality. In duality, a person only comprehends 33% of everything because he only accepts one of at least three perspectives, and that's where all the problems of the world basically come from. Racism, ethnocentrism, paternalism, and dogma, good versus evil, that all comes from duality. That violates natural law. Natural law says there's at least three perspectives, and it's about what can I learn from them. See, when you live this way, what you're doing is you're taking care of yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. And all these four areas, these four parts are the four parts of yourself. And they're connected deep within you. And that's your sacred area. That's your sacred center. So when you live this way, you establish peace inside of yourself. And when you communicate, you're communicating from that sacred center. So you're not communicating as a Lakota or as a Japanese or, you're communicating as a human being. And this is where we are connected to the earth. Because the earth sees us as her grandchildren. She doesn't favor anybody. There is no chosen race. There is no cursed race. Because there's religions that believe these things. And that's because they're communicating outside of that sacred circle. I just explained to you a few minutes ago what duality is. When you live a dualistic life, you're communicating outside that circle. And that's why people separate themselves from others they disagree with, and they say to these other people, you're wrong, and I will show you you're wrong. I will prove to you you're wrong because I'm smarter than you, I'm better than you, and I know what's right for you. My way is the only way to do something. And see, this is where all this trouble comes from. And so that's communicating from your skin color, your religion, your secret society, whatever it is. This is duality because your communication is unhealthy and it doesn't have healthy power because you're out to oppress others that are different than you, or you stay away from them and just don't want to have anything to do with them. And people who are this way are also racist too, they're the same way. It's just that they don't oppress. They're more like victims. A lot of problems come from that. And as such, dualistic people reject people who follow after Lakota Star Knowledge ways of learning. And from Lakota Star Knowledge, we see duality as a difficulty. And how we see that is looking at it, learning it, and see how it works, and make it work for us. We learn from it, and whatever emotions came with that, those emotions leave, they give you peace, you become emotionally developed, that helps you develop spiritually, mentally, and it affects your physical health in a good way. So you have to take care of all four parts though too. You got to go out there and eat right, exercise, and you don't have to be gung-ho about it, but to be sensible, eat sensibly, go out there and move your body around, dance, do Zumba or all kinds of things like that. So in duality, people only accept 33% of reality. That means when they have difficulties, they don't completely process the emotions. So most of the emotions are still trapped inside of them. So what happens is they end up not knowing themselves. Because when you have peace, you know yourself. You've taken that time to do that. In Lakota Star Knowledge, you've taken the time to know yourself, to establish the peace. And so when you experience anything new for the first time, you take the time to check it out. Especially if you have no idea. But if you do have an idea, you know what to do already. Yeah, but what I am talking about is when It's a totally new experience. And you just have no clue what's going on. That you have to check it out and then learn from it. And then now you have the knowledge. In duality, they don't do that because they don't know themselves. Too many emotions are trapped inside of them. They can't have peace. This results in them not knowing themselves, and this is why they're so judgmental. And anything they don't like, anything they disagree with, they judge it right away without even taking the time to check it out completely. They just hear a few things, and then they totally throw it out. Call it bad, call it evil, stupid, or whatever. That is duality. They don't develop spiritually because they don't develop emotionally. Instead, they develop inferiority complexes and low self-esteem and low self-worth. That is duality. That is unhealthy living. Cultural identity. That's not the important one. The important one is underneath, because underneath is where you connect to the Grandmother Earth, where your sacred center is. That's where you're a human being. That's Ikje. This is how our ancestors were. They were Ikje Oyate before they were Lakota. There were no ceremonies. There were no sacred items. It was just a way to live with nature. That's the basis. And then they're aware of the natural laws. Like attracts like. You attract what you are. You are what you attract. I'm not talking about the people who lived in teepees. I'm talking about millions of years ago. It was different back then. There was no sacred items because this way of life is a ceremony. And you are the sacred item. Because in this way, you're communicating from your sacred center. Yeah? And then you start to see others that way. So you don't pay attention to the color of the skin. Now, for those of us who already are communicating from our sacred centers, we know that skin color is that came later. We know that that's because of a nation's wherever they settled on this earth. It has to do with their bodies adapting to that ecosystem so that they could live. And part of that adaptation process includes the skin adapting, the hair adapting, the eyes adapting. That's why there's different skin colors. That's the original way. That's just superficial things. But underneath it was the same. Yeah? So sometimes when we speak to one another, it may come through a cultural way of talking, like an accent or a dialect. But the message is what should be paid attention to, and not the person's voice, their tone, or their, it should be the message. We need to focus more on the sacred center and the messages coming from there, which means we have to communicate from there, to send it from there to others so that they can pick it up with their sacred centers. And that's how we communicate like our ancestors. And there's some of us already doing that. Yeah? So we can spread that. That's a tradition that we can restart, reignite that, because it's inside of us. Reality begins within, so it is inside of us. It's something we can do. You don't have to be an old person to be wise. Yeah, you just go to any playground where there are several cultures living, and you're going to see children playing with each other from different cultures. I don't care. They're all out there to have fun. And they're trying to teach us that. Yeah, they're saying, hey, Mom, Dad, have fun with the other moms and dads. Yeah, but no, we start saying, oh no, don't play with them. Those guys are no good. And Don't play. Then we start calling people by the skin color. Don't play with those white people. They're kind of no good. See, and the child is losing its wisdom, and we're corrupting that child because of our own stupidity by talking like that. When I grew up, my mother never talked to me like that. And I'm really thankful for that because that made all the difference in the world. Yeah, well, and when she saw I was see on Sundays, she used to make bean soup, pork and bean soup. I gotta Google this right away. I gotta try to figure out what kind of pinto beans. I think that's what they're called. Now let me make sure. I'm gonna go to Google Images and type pinto beans. Yeah, no, that's not it. No, yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay, pinto beans. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's right. It was pinto beans. Shit, I thought there was one that's lighter than that though. Kind of a pink bean. I will have to Google that because I don't think it was pinto beans. I think it was well, we had all kinds of beans. Yeah, pinto beans, kidney beans, and all kinds of beans. Okay. No, not pinto. Navy beans. They're called navy beans. Because I was looking at all these pictures of beans and trying to come up with the closest one. And after I saw that, I remember that. Yeah, navy beans. And I don't know why they call it navy beans. Is this what they eat in the Navy or something? And gee, everybody eating navy beans and then going in the submarine and cruising around down there. And it's not a good olfactory situation down there. Yeah? Is that the right word? Shoot. So she would make that and with pieces of pork and baked fresh bread, yeah. And then in the afternoon, she would have the radio station blaring away, and there was this radio station called KOLY radio from Mobridge, South Dakota. That's north of the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation. It's just right across the Missouri River from the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. And on Sundays they had this polka show, and my mom would tune into that, and I really started liking it too. Yeah, so I would hang around the kitchen door, hanging around the kitchen area, the doorway. I'd be playing with my Hot Wheel cars on the floor and bobbing my head up and down to the polka music and anticipating eating this bean soup and this bread and butter, real butter. Yeah. Well, what they used to do is they after as the bread's coming out of the oven, she put a little dab all the tops of the buns with butter, and then cut one up and cut it in half, and it's just nice and still kind of soft, yeah. And then put butter in there, and then put salt on there, yeah. Salt and butter, and then we eat it like that, yeah. Eat it with the bean soup, then fried potatoes, yeah, mixed in with that. Oh, good memories, yeah, really good memories. That's Sunday, yeah. I really like that from my childhood, and but she never said this is white people music, this is Indian music. She never said things like that. She just play it, yeah. And then I really liked it. And then as I grew older, she told me that my great grandparents and their daughter, which is her mother, they all learned music in boarding school. It's one of the very few good things that happened in boarding school was athletics and music, yeah. And so a lot of Indians learned music all over America. There in these boarding schools, there were music bands. Yeah, they even after they graduated from high school, some of them got together in New Mexico And they had this traveling Indian orchestra that went around America playing out wherever they could. I gotta find that story. It's a really cool story, and that was so cool, yeah. And that's talent, yeah. Playing an instrument, learning it, playing it, being good at it, being in a music group, that's talent. Instead of this rap hip hop shit, that's not talent shit. Anybody could rhyme, yeah. That's this. It's just that that's just talking, yeah. But that's not music. Music is talent. Music heals, can make you feel things, yeah. And it's nice to do things too as well. Anyway, um, so I think that's why my mother liked that kind of music, because her mother and her grandparents played that kind of music, and so that's how I got into that. Then as I grew older, I mean, she knew I was going to be a musician, yeah. So anytime there's something on TV that's musical, she would call me in, yeah. And one time she said, "David, come look at there's some kids in the band. They're playing on TV." So I ran in there because a couple of them kids looked a little bit a year or two older than me. Boy, they were singing and dancing and playing the guitars and drums, and I was like, "Damn, these guys are really good." That was the Jackson 5. But my mother never said, "Look at these black kids," or "Look at these Hasapa kids." She never said that. She said, "Look at these kids, they're in the band." Another time she brought home a record. She went to a teacher workshop because she was a teacher. And she brought home this record. She said, "Listen to this, David. This is a guitar player that a lot of people like," she said. So I listened to it, and this first song was a song called Carol, and then some other songs, Sweet Little 16 and stuff like that. It was Chuck Berry. She never said, "Listen to this black guitar player." She never said that. In fact, I think she didn't even say guitar player. I think she said, "Listen to the singer," I think she said. So when I heard Chuck Berry, I knew what I wanted to do. Yeah, I wanted to be a guitar player after that. So then I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan as well, and that just nipped it for me. Yeah, I mean that just made the decision. I wanted to be a rock and roll guy. So my mother, whenever she introduced things to me, she never said the skin color of the musicians or the people. So look at that kid over there. He's a crazy guy or whatever, yeah. One time we went traveling someplace, and we stopped. I think I was visiting a relative in Montana, and I was about 9 years old maybe. And we stopped at this playground because what we used to do is, cause there were no, not every town had a McDonald's, yeah. And so sometimes we would stop at a store and buy cold meat and bread. These are cold cuts. And in the Indian world, we say cold meat, yeah. But I think the proper word for that is cold cuts, like salami, bologna, sliced liver cheese and all that kind of good stuff. And so she would buy some and a loaf of bread and potato chips and some pop, and we'd go to a park and have lunch, take a break in driving because that was a long drive. We were at this playground, and here these kids, the little kids, were playing, and it must have been about 4 or 5 years old. And here, one of them fell off the slide. Gee, that was a hell of a tumble, yeah. he stood up, yeah. He's really crying, and he saw my mom, and he came over and he said, "Mommy," he said to my mom. Now, did you notice how I told the story? I said this kid. This was a white kid, and he came over to my mom, and he saw her. She was the only adult there, yeah. So he wasn't blind or anything. He just didn't see the skin color. He saw an adult. And so my mom comforted him, and then he ate with us. Yeah. So there we were, a bunch of Indians and a little white kid sitting in a park eating lunch. So she sat there, and he said, "Where do you live?" And he pointed to a house nearby. So she said, "You better go home." You say, your mother might want to know where you're at." So he said, "Okay." And he kissed my mom, and he went back. Yeah, he's smiling, and he went back. And see, this is so cool. When see, my mom did not see him as a white kid. See, most Indian parents would probably say, "Here's a Washichu kid here." So, this is the way my mother was, and I'm really thankful for that. That she was that way, because that wore off on me too. Yeah, that I learned to be that way as well, and so this is why I take time to know people, and I don't go by skin color, I don't go by religion, I don't go by political whatever, because there's good and bad people wherever you go. Yeah, on this earth, wherever you go, you're gonna encounter good people and bad people among the Chinese, among the Koreans. Gee, what about this story that was in the news where this daughter of a man who owns a lot of businesses in South Korea, and one of those businesses is also this Korean Airlines, and I think were they in America? I think they were in America, in one somewhere in the East Coast, and that plane was going to fly back to Korea. I think that's how it was going, but she being the daughter of the owner of the airlines, she was sitting in first class, and she was served before, because for those of you that never flown, first class people get snacks right away before the plane even takes off. Yeah, they get snacks, drinks, and champagne and appetizers. They get that right when they're sitting down. So anyway, they were serving peanuts, and she got her peanuts in a bag instead of a plate. So she really got upset. Yeah, she was just shouting, and she demanded that the what do you call it, the person in charge of the flight attendant. She made that guy kneel down and beg for forgiveness for giving her peanuts in a bag and not on the plate. And she ordered the plane to turn around, and she didn't want this guy on that plane. So the plane, these guys all work for her dad. So the plane, I don't think it got in the air yet. Yeah, so it went back to the terminal, and that guy was taken off, and then he caught a ride back in another Korean airline, and then she went back. They went back like that. And as soon as he got back to South Korea, he told the media what happened. Oh, but I guess before he talked to the media, the South Korean air officials, they came to his house, and they told him, they asked him, please don't say anything bad about this lady. Yeah, don't say what happened. Yeah, don't say that she made you kneel down, and he said, that was so humiliating. It was so it just less than human. Yeah, and he said that was so humiliating, and he said no, he's going to say what he wants. So just think, even after they landed, that airline still was trying to get him not to talk to the media, but he went ahead and did it anyway, and then I think it was a day later that the daughter came forward, and she issued an apology and resigned from all the jobs that she has and all her father's businesses. Just think of that. The father owns many businesses. They're all big businesses in South Korea, and she had a job, and each one of them
So she was probably making several $1 million. Yeah, and she probably still is. And she made this apology and supposedly stepped down from all her job positions and and I was like, look at that. How vain is that? Yeah, we a lot of us on the reservation, we don't go around the world, so we don't know what people are like. When we see Asians and we think that they all talk English funny, they all because we base that based on what we see on TV. Yeah, and so we all think they're a certain way. And see, the TV is presenting a stereotype, and we're picking up on it. So we think all Asians are quiet and subdued, and we're learning that stereotype. So when you hear about this lady and what she did, is just amazing. Yeah, I mean, amazingly horrendous. Yeah, just forcing this guy to kneel and beg for forgiveness. And then after that, forcing the plane to turn around. So now they're thinking of I think she might have broken some laws, because that's a major thing to do that in the airplane. They only should, you have to radio the what do you call it, the that tower, the control tower. They have to get permission to do that, and I think it only can be done in a medical emergency, like somebody had a heart attack, or somebody just had a baby, or there's a guy who's joking about a bomb or something like that. Then they can do that. But for just to kick this guy off because she didn't like him, because he gave her peanuts in a bag and not a plate, that's really superficial. That is really, really, really vain. And so this is, it's incredible how people can treat each other like that. And here's a really good example of two people in the same culture, speaking the same language. Yeah, they're both kind of brown-skinned people. And here's a perfect example of one being a totally evil person, and the other one, standing up for himself and saying, he made that statement in the media, and good for him, yeah, because it shows you the corruption among these South Koreans. See, this is like, if you're from a poor part of South Korea, these kind of people, they're gonna keep you down. Like say you study, what do you call that in when you're studying to manage a hotel? There's a hospitality or something like that. There's a college degree in that, and I forgot what it's called. And you're studying that. If you are not part of one of those families, you're never going to manage a hotel. Never. Because they have like a caste system there. And, so if you come from a poor family, but you still manage to get that degree, that university degree, you have the qualifications to be a manager of a hotel. But if one of these families owns a lot of these hotels, and you go apply for a job, and they ask you, where are you from? And you say, I'm from, maybe you come from a fishing village, and then that guy will probably say something like, yeah, I could tell, I could smell it, I could smell the fish before you even walk through the door. See, that's the way they communicate. They're really, really vicious. It's almost mafia style, the way they run their business. Yeah, and it is, and people. I mean, they have a word for that in Korean, and I forgot what it was. They were telling about this on the news, and So here again, you have an example of two people from the same culture, same skin color, both speaking the same language, and one was trying to oppress the other. So you see, good and bad does not belong to skin color. Same thing happens in the Indian world. Yeah, every culture is this way. And some people are going to say, well, us Indians, see, we're not like that. Yes, we are. We are that way. Just look at the tribal politics, and there's your perfect example. Yeah, these tribal politicians, they never do anything for the people. The only time when they actually do something for the people is when they will benefit more from it. Other than that, they only go into business ventures that benefit their family and friends. Meanwhile, 90% of the reservation remains in unemployment, in poverty. 3, 4, 5 families living in one house. It's ridiculous. Yeah, the tribe doesn't even do anything to save the language. The language is going to die. On the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, they had an election, and they were swearing in the new candidates. Now, if I remember correctly, there are 14 council positions on the tribal council on the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. If I'm correct on it, I think it's 14. Guess how many of that 14 did their swearing in and their speech in Lakota, in the Lakota language? Of those 14 tribal council people, how many do you think did their speech and their swearing in, their acceptance speech and their swearing in, taking the oath, I mean? How many of those 14 do you think did that in Lakota language? 1. Only 1. That is really sad. This is supposed to be representing our people, and only 1 leader speaks the Lakota language. Just 1 out of 14. The tribal chairman is the leader of the tribe. He can't speak Lakota either. Imagine that. Our tribal president cannot speak Lakota. And they do nothing to remedy that. Why? These tribal governments have been existing since 1934, I think. These tribal governments are not the same as the governments under Sitting Bull. That's traditional. Those traditional governments are totally different. In the traditional government, there is no one leader of the tribe. There's council, several councils. And those councils are guided by older men who form their own councils. See, everybody is represented. There's no imbalance in the government, traditional government. And people didn't get paid. And if you didn't do a good job, your family took you out, put somebody else in. There's no election. The family takes you out and puts somebody else in who's better or wiser. So every family has a representative on one of the councils. That worked for thousands of years. But today's tribal council is something, it's a complete different animal. This was actually created by Washington, D.C. It's based on the federal government. And it puts two sides against each other. That's the duality. So, for example, in a typical tribal election, for every position that you're going to vote for, anybody could run for it. And you just have to meet the requirements, that's all. So, for example, if I were to, I come from District 1 on Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation. If I want to run for council, I can only run for District 1, not District 2 or whatever, because I live in District 1. If I run for the tribal chairman, which is actually the presidency, I can if I want to. You can be from any district to run for the chairmanship. But for a council position, you have to actually live in that district. Okay? So what happens is at a certain time of the year they announce, okay, if with elections coming now, if you want to be a candidate, you have to sign up. You have to get a petition of 100 signatures or something like that of people who will sign, and then you turn those signatures in, they verify them, and then they put your name on the ballot. So for District 1, let's say I'm running, but let's say 27 other people are running too, because you don't have to have any kind of requirement other than being a member of the tribe to run for council. So a totally uneducated alcoholic could run for tribal council. If he has a big family, he might win, because all his family is going to vote for him. Yeah? And then he'll say to his alcoholic friends, "Hey, you guys vote for me, I'll buy you wine. Every year that I'm a councilman, I will buy you wine." So other winos start to vote for him too, that are not his relatives, but they still want that free wine, so they're going to vote for him. So then out of those 27 candidates, I lose to an alcoholic, because I don't come from a big family. Yeah, and my name is a Rosebud name. Little Elk comes from the Rosebud Sioux tribe. That's where my father's from. So I wouldn't win, but I would lose to an alcoholic who comes from a big family. Yeah. So let's say there's a lady that goes by the name of In the Woods. And let's say this lady is known she's a slut, okay? Everybody knows she sleeps with anybody. She goes to powwows and she's sleeping with anybody. She's married, but she goes out with other men all the time. But she comes from a huge family. 2 of them actually, from her mother and father's side. Each family is huge in District 1. And let's say I speak Lakota, I have cultural, traditional knowledge, I'm ceremonial, I go to ceremonies, and I have a reputation of being fair. I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't use drugs, I don't drink alcohol. My hair is long. But here comes this lady, really short hair, can't speak one word of Lakota, sleeps around with a lot of men every weekend, leaving her husband every weekend and sleeping around with different guys. But because she comes from 2 huge families that all live in District 1, she wins the election. She has no traditional knowledge. She has no. She's not known for wisdom. She's kind of a sex addict. But because she comes from these 2 big families, they all vote for her, and she wins by a landslide. The rest of us 26 are just out of luck. So now the top 2 vote getters are going to run against each other in November. So she and whoever the other top vote getter is, and it might be somebody who didn't even get that many anyway, but he's going to run up against her because he's the second to the top. See, it has to be the 2 top vote getters. So then in November, this lady and this guy run against each other, and again she totally landslides him. She totally wins because of the 2 families she comes from. Now she fires everybody that worked in certain positions, and then she hires her sister who has absolutely no knowledge of anything into being the tribal secretary. That's the kind of things that happen in tribal politics all over America. See, that is totally the opposite of the governments that were led by Sitting Bull. Yeah, that's totally the opposite. Today, the leaders are selfish as hell. So it just not a good situation at all. Yeah, and this shows you again today. You have Indians who are good and Indians who are not. Yeah, so we oppress each other. So you can't say all Indians are good. That's not true. It's really, really false. We're just like everybody else. We have the capacity to change, though. Yeah, but that's you have to want that. Anyway, I just wanted to show you, that in the Indian world we're not all good like some people think. Because there's a lot of people in Europe that really fantasize about Indians, and they think we're all this nature-loving, tree-hugging, prancing in the prairie, sitting on the hills with wolves, and that's just fantasy. That is just total fantasy. Yeah, and we're just like everybody else. We can be good, and we can be not good. Yeah, so it happens among us too. So anyway, I hope you remember that and quit fantasizing about us. Yeah, we're just like everybody else. We're no better than anyone else. We are all human beings. Yeah, we're all Ikche Oyate. We are all the human nation. We are all our grandmother Earth's children, her grandchildren. So when we come to peace with ourselves and communicate from our sacred centers, we will fulfill that role, yeah, as blessings to one another, to the earth, and honoring the earth, and showing that yes, we really are her grandchildren, and it doesn't matter what skin color you are, yeah. Okay.